The lane was always the great marketplace, and every insalubrious street and alley abutting on it was covered with the overflowings of its commerce and its mud.
Great ladies of the West came down again to the beloved lane to throw off the veneer of refinement and plunge gloveless hands in barrels of pickled cucumbers.
My aim in Wentworth Street, dort is mir sehr geht. Mir steht auf in der Früh und man trinkt a cup of tea. Die Luft ist sehr frisch von die verschlunkene Fisch. Keiner fragt uns nicht, was, wir hatten sie denn aus. Da steht Jiddel mit sein Fiddle und spielt die Melodie. Es immer geht immer heim in Wentworth Street.
Geht ein Blick in der Lane, wird ihr dorten sehen. Viele Menschen stehen, abgelost den Kopf.
You'll see there many people with slumped heads. Amongst them, on the corner of Goulston Street, stands a new immigrant Jew looking for a job.
That period, the people mainly spoke Yiddish, those early immigrants that came. And so you had a very Yiddish atmosphere, and there would have been in this area posters on the walls, and there would have been a hubbub of Yiddish in the air. Of course, their children didn't speak Yiddish so well, so as the decades went on, you got a real mix of the two languages.
You might think that writers who wrote in Yiddish and writers who wrote in English had very little in common, and their choice to write in one of those languages reflected that. But in fact, we found that writers, both in Yiddish and in English in the East End, were writing about the very same questions. Their writing reflected generational tension, loss, dislocation, and often also trenchant critique of the Anglo-Jewish leadership.
This critique was sometimes directed at the Jewish Board of Guardians, whose offices towered over Middlesex Street. Morris Winchevsky, the socialist poet, wrote about streetlights as a symbol of authority, illuminating the area, but not the poverty. Die Lämpelach, sie brennen sich, beleuchten jedes Haus. Sie sehen sie, sie hören sie, durchsuchen sie, nicht stolz.
Have they seen a young man, hungry, weak, walking about, searching the whole precious night long for a corner, a door, a step in the freezing street to lie down and rest?
Just round the corner from the Board of Guardians is Sandy's Row Synagogue, built in 1854 by the Dutch Jewish community, and by 1887 was a large established congregation with many Eastern European Yiddish-speaking immigrants. The English and Yiddish texts show different approaches to religion. The socialist Winchevsky railed against class differences in synagogue structure.
I am a machinist. You are a rabbi. You do business with God. Without worry, without toil.
Dein einziges Säure ist ein bisschen teurer. Wenn ich sitz und sterb, verrückt in a sklep.
Winchevsky's English language contemporary, the writer Israel Zangwill, grew up around the corner from here in the 1870s. In his celebrated novel Children of the Ghetto, Zangwill described the pain of immigrant families fractured by the waning of religious belief. His characters, Esther Ansell and Hannah Jacobs, both born in London to immigrant parents, discuss the beginnings of religious doubt.
I don't know what I believe, Hannah says. I do everything a Jewess ought to do, I suppose, and yet, I don't know.
Esther's smile faded. She looked at her companion with fresh interest.
Hannah's face was full of brooding thought, and she had unconsciously come to a standstill. I wonder whether anybody understands herself, she said reflectively. Do you?
Esther flushed at the abrupt question without knowing why. I don't know, she stammered.
In the 1950s, Arnold Wesker's explosive play Chicken Soup with Barley revisited the idea of the loss of faith. His character, Sarah Khan, is a devout communist who, alone among her family and friends, clings tenaciously to her beliefs and to the experience of political activism fighting injustice together on the East End streets.
Who do I know? Who to trust now? God, who are our friends now? But all my life I've fought with your father and the rotten system that couldn't help him. All my life, I've worked with a party that meant glory and freedom and brotherhood. You want me to give it up now? You want me to move to Hendon and forget who I am? If the electrician who comes to mend my fuse blows it instead, so I should stop having electricity, I should cut off my light. Socialism is my light. Can you understand that?
East End writers had been exploring family conflict for decades. Katie Brown was called London's Yiddish bestseller. She wrote sketches of East End life in the 1930s. Breadwinners starts with a daughter about to go hiking and her mother demanding to know where hiking was.
Nowhere, Mum. You go off into the forest, through fields, along straight and twisty paths, walking till you get tired, then resting, and then going farther.
What's the point in that? I can't see the fun in dragging yourself around the countryside. Rachel, just come here a moment. I want to ask you something. Rachel ran in, laughing loudly, and when I saw her, I nearly fainted. She was wearing a pair of trousers, an open-necked man's shirt, a pair of large, heavy boots, a rucksack on her shoulders, and a cigarette in her mouth. "My daughter!" I cried out in anguish. "Are you out of your mind? What's the matter with you? Have you no respect for your father and mother, for God, or for anyone? Oh, my God, if your father saw you now, he'd die of shock."
Oh, shut up, Mum. Don't talk nonsense, my daughter answered angrily. You're so old-fashioned. But me, I'm modern. I'm much more comfortable in trousers.
These family conflicts represented wider social change.
As we walk in these streets, the literature of the East End comes back to life. Like these texts, the landscape bears traces of the tensions and conflicts of East End lives, always leaving and always being drawn back.
Whitechapel, mein Whitechapel, der kennen kenn ich die nicht mehr, die bist gewöhnt dem Londonidens Glanz. Whitechapel, mein Whitechapel, in die Eugenfeldverträge blieben ist kein Winkel, kein Ganz. Der Pavillon mit seinem Pracht verlegt du keiner jeder Nacht, du hat gewohnt der lockschende Fabrikant. Und du gestanden ist die Schiele, nächstlehaft die Jelly Deals, es ist jeder Spann mir lieben geht bekannt. In 5 Pavillons linker Hand sehe ich Landhaus Restaurant, Akteuren schreiben es bei jedem Tisch. Gewehen ist a Fresser, ja dort a Kibitzer, ja das Favorite auch, mir liegt in Tag noch Titel für